today is something that I've been super excited to build towards. We are going to talk about the tactical, practical techniques of how to be a great, skilled, service-centered closer. I'm going to teach you what we call the 9 categories of closing questions. And we're going to at least start on this. We may not get through all 9 on this training. We'll see. We'll get through what we can. But this is actually what you say. These are actually the words you use. Now, it's the mindset that matters a lot, and that's why we always cover like the mental and then we cover the technical, but today is a technical training on the words you need to use to close a sale. And let me start by telling you that a true professional will study these 9. They will know these 9. They will understand what the 9 are, when to use them, and how to use them. Most salespeople are not professionals. Most of them are amateurs. And if you want to be paid like a professional, you need to act like one. And professionals go through training, right? Professional athletes, professional singers, professional actors, they all have coaches. They all go through, doctors, lawyers, accountants, professions. They're of professionals because they have professional training. As an entrepreneur, this is your professional training. It's this kind of level that we got to understand. So we'll start diving in to the 9 categories of closing questions. And I want you to understand, some people are resistant to learning how to be a great closer because they think, oh, if I study closing, that's going to make me be more likely to apply pressure on people. And I don't want to be that. What they fail to understand is actually it's the opposite. It's the opposite. The more well-trained someone is in closing, the less pressure they apply, the less the prospect even feels like they're being sold, and yet, ironically, the more sales they will make. So let's dive in. 9 categories of closing questions. The first type of closing question is what we call a gauge question. A gauge question is a question that gauges the temperature of where somebody is at. You would sometimes hear these called trial closing questions. These are like trial closing questions. The reason that they exist is less of trying to help someone make a decision, and it's more of helping us assess, should we even bother continuing the conversation at all? Because if they're not interested, we don't want to sit and waste their time. We certainly don't want to waste our time. So we want to know, where are they at? In fact, on the last training, we covered, something that we call the purchase point. A lot of people call these buying lines. And we looked at the mental part of what is happening in a decision. People start out not interested. Eventually, their level of desire crosses over to where they will buy. And if you keep talking too long, they'll cross back out of that purchase point, and they'll decide not to buy. Your job is to kind of like assess where they are in this. Your job is to close when they're up here and help them decide at the moment they're ready to transform their life or their team or their business. So in order to know where they are on here, that is exactly why we use gauge questions. Gauge questions sound like this. How does this look so far? How is this sounding? What do you think about what you've seen? Is this all making sense? Are you following this? Right? Those are very simple. It's why we teach this like a level 1 type of a closing question. It's a gauge. I'm trying to gauge their level of interest. I'm trying to understand where they're at. All right? So we start with that to be able to assess how far along we are in the process. The second type of closing, or the second category of closing question, is what we call a confirmation question. Confirmation questions are ones that you ask just to verify something that you already believe to be true. So what we're doing here is we're repeating back to them something that they have said to us, to both affirm and edify that we heard them correctly, but also to move the sales process along. And we're highlighting specific things that they said so that if they continue to acknowledge that they said those things, those are indicators that they should perhaps consider investing into what you're offering. And again, this applies for selling anything, right? We've used this to sell software. We've used this to sell training. We've sold coaching. We've sold consulting. We've sold book deals. We've sold books door to door. Like we've sold cell phones with this. Like we have sold almost every type of product you can imagine, because it's not about the widget. It's about human psychology. That's what we're talking about. So confirmation questions would sound something like this. Am I correct in understanding that what you really want is blank, right? So think about if you were on a free call with us because you were wanting to like build your speaking career. And we have a conversation. I say, what is your dream? And you say, my dream is I want to speak on bigger stages. I want to speak in front of more people, right? So I go, great. As we move into the close, I just want to say, because you have now been talking, and rather than just saying, do you want to buy, which you could say it, that's part of do it now, but the 9 categories of closing questions are sort of an explosion of that W in do it now. It's just a more advanced level. And before I do that, I just say, all right, so just to make sure I heard correctly, is your dream is to be on more stages and to be in front of bigger audiences. Is that right? Yes. That's a confirmation question. I'm confirming something they already said, or I'm confirming something that I believe to be true, right? So if I could help you overcome some specific thing, would that be valuable for you, right? So, what I understand is you're not sure how to get the gigs. You're struggling to go, how do I get people to notice me? And where do I find the speaking engagements? If I could help you overcome that, is that something that would be valuable for you? Yes, right? So these are questions that you're asking where you pretty much know the answer to the question is yes before you ask the question. You're not 100% sure because sometimes you mishear, but, if I were able to make it work so that, whatever, insert something they said was important to them, would that be what you want? If this enabled you to achieve your dream, would that be something you were glad you did? You're just confirming. And sometimes they'll stop you and go, no, that's actually not quite right. It's actually like, well, I don't really want to be a speaker per se. I don't want to like be on the road away from my family too much. My real dream is like, I just want more people to hear about my book. I really want to grow my podcast. Oh, okay. I got you. So now let's back up. And, it's that kind of a thing. So, but either way, you're creating momentum. You're creating conceptual agreement. They're not saying yes to the sale, but they are saying yes to the concept of what you help them with. That's called conceptual agreement. We have to get conceptual agreement before we get literal agreement. Confirmation questions really help us with that. Then the third category of questions is what we call open-ended questions. Open-ended questions. These are the most common types of closing questions. In fact, most people, these are the questions they use. And my guess is if I were to shadow you on a sales call or in a sales meeting, you would probably end the meeting with an open-ended question. An open-ended question, by definition, is any question you ask where there is an infinite number of answers, right? So a lot of people will end their sales presentation with like, so what do you think? That is an open-ended question. And that's not a bad question. That's not a bad question to include in your matrix, but it is a terrible question to use to think that's going to bring someone to a decision. That can only be the first step in the process.